Hello, everyone. Good afternoon, good evening from whichever part of the world you're joining today. My name is Saumya Gupta. I work as a solution expert in Platform 3 Solutions. And I'm currently based out of Singapore. And we have gathered here to talk about a very burning topic that we have been seeing since a few months now, both in the US and the Asia Pacific and the Europe regions, which is archiving HR and payroll data. Now, there are organizations, especially in APAC, that are increasing in terms of headcounts, in terms of size, uh, uh, very heavily in the past few years, and because of which all the data of HR that is and payroll that is saved inside their systems, it needs to be monitored better. So there are multiple reasons why we require archiving HR and payroll data. One could be the primary reason that the data is too big and we have to archive it, we have to manage it better. Second is that for compliance reasons, for employees who have already moved out of the organizations, for how long should we keep holding their data? Third is when we are having audits coming in and we have to present old data to the auditing officers, or for data discovery it becomes really difficult if the system is not really maintained. So there are two major verticals that get impacted with ill managed HR payroll data, and those are human resources and finance. Now, on HR side, there are a few key challenges that we see. Like, for example, the first one that I mentioned here, just to retrieve employee salary and benefits for audits and disputes. Let's say if an ex-employee from years ago comes up and says that, "Oh, you have not paid bonuses to me and there is a dispute and I can raise a dispute." So in cases like that, the HR will need to access their old payroll records. Now, if this employee is, let's say, more than 8 years old or 10 years old in the organization, like left before 8 years from the organization, they will not really have all their data in their latest softwares, and there would be so many software upgrades that would have happened. There would be HR systems that would have changed. Now, earlier there were the legacy HR systems that we had did not have that much scalability, because of we have started moving out to better and more scalable and more modern systems like Workday, for example, and so many others, Workday, Strada. But right now, because the employee has come right now and the data was really old, it's difficult to consolidate all that data from the legacy system to present today. So this is one reason why HR departments find it very hard to present data when required in terms of disputes, in times of disputes. Then, for example, for if an employee is just going for mortgage and he wants 5-year-old tax statements from a certain period to a certain period of time. Again, it becomes difficult to identify exactly if the data is historical and if it is not managed in our production systems. Then there is always a compliance angle when it comes to human data, and especially HR data, right? Why it is becoming so important to manage it today is because of the amount of sensitivity this data really has. It has all the demographic information, it has all the sensitive information, contact information, account information. So name it. All possible sensitive categories, sensitive fields will be available in this data. So it becomes very highly regulated domain, where there will be employment laws, labor laws, there will be different laws, different articles and sections of GDPR commanding a different sort of a usage and exposure and regulation on top of data, and some other government laws would be commanding it in a different way. So let's say if a government audit requires proof of minimum wage compliance for, let's say, years 2000 to 2020, and if we do not, if we have, let's say, moved out of our systems, and so whenever we modernize, mostly there is a general tendency to not take a lot of historical data with us, because of which we tend to hold the old system also, and we tend to go to the new system. So that maintenance of that old system it causes issues in really consolidating the data of the old employees to the new request, to the new subject access requests that come up. Similarly, talking about finance, finance has its own troubles. So here, if let's say there was a very old legacy PeopleSoft data that is available in an organization, now the company moved out of the PeopleSoft software and moved to a relatively more modern and scalable and relevant software for them for today. And but still, because the source legacy data is still available in the source system, which is on PeopleSoft, they will have to maintain both the PeopleSoft application and the new application side by side, because of which the costs go really high, they soar really high. They don't know what they can do about it, because sometimes these applications, legacy applications, also don't allow extraction of data as is so easily from the source, which makes it very difficult to consolidate into the new system. And the prices keep rising up, and there's nothing that you can do. Then there are tax audits that are required for historical data. There are periodic tax audits that are always required for finance. And if the company is getting into a bigger venture or a bit bigger bid, they would require even more data from their historical records to present it for credibility. And it becomes difficult to just consolidate everything from legacy old softwares plus the new data and present it. Then in legacy systems, we did not really have that much. So I'm talking about, let's say, 20 years back, where the systems that were being used at that time did not have advanced fraud detection and any monitoring, higher quality monitoring tools where we can really identify that was there an overpayment, was there a duplicate payment, or was there any sort of a default that happened in the middle. And because if we have, let's say, identified based on today's trends and on today's software that, okay, there was some issues, it again becomes difficult to go back to my legacy system and be able to run similar sort of analytics on top of it. And the company can suffer severe losses. And we have seen that with our clients before. So, because as a result of the struggles faced by human resources and finance, the one department that gets crushed is IT. IT has to manage the privacy, IT has to manage the security, and IT has to manage the cost, maintenance of all the legacy challenges, of all the challenges we are facing with the legacy software. Because of which they find it difficult for in legacy softwares, they find it difficult to do anonymization, they find it difficult to really limit the access of region from from accessors of different region. They cannot really put geofencing on top of legacy systems, and it becomes really hard for IT to really regulate the whole thing and make sure that it is all compliant within the same region. And there are issues like this that just keep happening, and eventually IT has to deal with all of it. These are the challenges that are today driving the archival for legacy payroll systems, so that they can, one, move to the new systems, two, be more compliant for the old historical data. Now, when I talk about legacy data archival, what exactly does that mean? So, data archival often gets confused by the term of backup, and I would like to talk about this comparison here as well. So, there's a difference between backup and archive. When we talk about backup, backup is about taking frequent snapshots of data to protect the point in time state of that particular data set across different time intervals. And whereas when we talk about archive, it's about extracting the data based on the life cycle of based on the retention life cycle, etc., of data from the source into a different system. Now the difference between backup and archive is very clear. Backup over here will keep creating copies of data, and the main reason for that would be protection, whereas archive will offload data from the source system and move it to a more reliable data preservation storage. And when it comes to archival, the primary driving factor for archival is not really protection. It's more compliance and governance. It leans towards that side, because archival is done in order to make sure that retrievability and accessibility for that data remains unhindered for future. So backup is point in time only, so you can keep taking backups every week of the month. Whereas if you have archival, so how we approach archival for enterprises is we call it enterprise data archival. We provide an enterprise level data archival strategy, where we will not only talk about historical data just to do a one time data transfer from source to target, we will also be talking about the live data, which should automatically keep getting retired based on the compliance laws, geography, whatever that geography is imposing. And we call it live archival, where as soon as we reach the retention criteria, it should just keep getting moved into a preservation system. So that's the difference. So whenever we talk about archival, people confuse it with just having a backup. Now, another difference with archival would be that the searching and accessibility of data is way better in terms compared to backup. Backup is basically just a snapshot, and if you want to really search and access data on top of it, you would ideally want to restore it. In a general case, you'll have to restore the entire data set and you'll have to search on top of it. Whereas an archive makes sure that there is efficient search algorithms and efficient search indexing done on top of the data stored in the archive, so that it can be searched based on popular parameters. There should be partitioning and all of that available so that we can quickly get there while we meet the SLA, because again, we have to do it within the SLA permitted time. When we talk about archiving, I will just touch upon this subject a little bit. Archiving can be done in multiple ways. It can be table archiving, data record archiving, file archiving, complex archiving, and then it can also be on terms in terms of the format of data. It could be structured, unstructured, and content. Where today we are talking about doing enterprise level archiving, which consolidates, encompasses the structured, unstructured, and semi-structured data formats all together, make sure that they are all available in a unified repository, and searching can happen on top of it. Okay, so moving ahead, I'll just touch upon our product suite on what we really do, what we really use in terms of achieving this entire thing. We have the Archon suite of products, which contains Archon Analyzer, Archon ETL, and Archon Data Store. Archon Analyzer is your friend in need when you have data that is not discoverable, data for which you do not have any subject matter experts that can really identify that this is your HR data, here is where your finances lie, this is all your master data, these are all your transactions, this is actually backup data, here is all your log data lying. So it helps, analyzer helps to categorize really all the um, all the different data domains and data categories and for the source system, so that we can move towards insights, we can move to taking decisions with uh, empowering insights that can help us that okay, the first thing that I want to do is I want to go to my oldest data set, so we can do it, identify that using age analysis. Let me find my oldest data set, which is also very sensitive. That would be like my first thing that I want to identify and want to get rid of, or want to preserve, or want to take the right action for. Then let me find what is very old and also contains the biggest volume of my storage. So in that case, also I will identify that okay, this is one particular chunk of data. If it's not needed, and if I get rid of it, immediately my half of the problem is solved. So things like that. So analyzer will be able to identify categories of data automatically. It has entity resolution inbuilt for finance systems, which can identify the business cycles, how the finance data has flown between different subjects, whether it be the providers, the merchants, the employee itself, and all of the management. And once we know all of that, we can make more informed decisions on what to migrate, what to archive, and what to just decommission. Then we move on to Archon ETL, which is our migration tool. So the USP, the hero property of Archon ETL is it has inbuilt connectors to to the most popular and to a variety of legacy source HR applications. We have connectors for PeopleSoft, we have connectors for SAP, and we can connect to those applications. We understand the logics that are built behind those reports and screens that are available in an SAP and a PeopleSoft system. We have decoded those logics, reverse engineered it so that we can, after you really archive the data from the source to the archive, you will be able to access the reports as is like you were accessing in the source system, just to make sure that even after archive, your data retrievability is smooth, and you will be able to operate the system as is like you were doing before the archival. That you cannot do with a backup, of course. So yeah, there are automated workflows that we have to create these reports where it can all be set up in a couple of clicks, and we can just connect to the source, identify what's where and what to do, set up automated workflows to move data into the archive, and also set up accessibility and reporting on top of that data. Talking about Archon Data Store, Archon Data Store is our repository, which uh, it is a data lakehouse solution which contains which can handle massive amounts of data with tiered storage with full text searches. And the difference between it being a regular lakehouse than just being Archon Data Store would be that we prioritize compliance and governance as the utmost important requirement for any data that is held inside. And there is accessibility on top of, so generally in case of OLAP systems, it becomes difficult to really access data and get sub-second responses. It's just that we have to wait for that search to respond for a day, or sometimes it takes weeks to just give out those response, because it is all stored in very highly compressed storages. It will be in iceberg, and it will not be really in relational storage to get a database sort of an efficiency. But that is something that we have beaten in Archon Data Store because compliance was our mandate. Meeting SLAs and delivering results in time is something that's very, very important for us. And that was like the utmost priority of all our clients. So that is something that has been taken care of. Then these are our key features for our Archon Data Store. We have compliance that is driven by AI. We can identify the context of the data stored within the source application, and then we can make sure that the compliance that is applied on top of that data is based on the subject of that data, domain of that data, and the geography in which that data lies. Then we have an inbuilt data vault, which is called a data bunker. I will be talking more about the data bunker shortly. Then Archon Data Store is metadata driven in a very diverse and rich way. For example, we are talking about HR payroll data archival today. So ADS can work on top of any other industry also, right? We have manufacturing, we have healthcare, and we have proprietary metadata formats for each of these industries, which encompass the primary attributes required for that metadata model. For example, if we are talking about the manufacturing side, we know that this particular these particular fields have to be available. So there are customized models based on industries that automatically sync in and identify their properties from the source data. So there will be a fixed set of attributes for payroll that that Archon is going to look at, is going to try to identify from the source. And once it has got those particular attributes, it will be able to take better decisions and give better analytics in future. So having a metadata model curtailed to that particular domain and that particular subject is how it makes Argon Data Store really, really rich when it comes to giving out insights and comes to classifying data. Now, talking about storage tiering and deployment options, I'll take this together. So, we can deploy the archive on top of both cloud, on-prem, hybrid, and SaaS. So we have multiple deployment options and offerings given out for it. One very simple reason why this is important, because compliance is important for us, is that we have worked with a lot of highly regulated industries like banks and insurances, where they do want to move to the cloud, but because they have so much sensitive data in it, there are regulations that don't allow them to really move to the cloud, but they do want to be scalable and they do want to um, move to the better technology so that they can utilize their analytics capabilities. So in that, so that we can do that, we came up with a data bunker. So I'll just go further to show you how that looks. So a data bunker is a highly secure system that provides air gapping between sensitive data and non-sensitive data and segregates these two data systems from each other so that we can apply even more protection on top of the data that is sensitive. Like for example, here if you talk about payroll information, there are multiple fields in payroll data, right? So this is also an extraction of our metadata model that is stored in ADS for payroll information specifically. There are high risk fields in payroll data, there are medium risk fields, there are low risk fields. Some fields are the preferred fields by hackers and they are very, very highly vulnerable. So, what we can really do when it comes to protecting this information inside payroll data is by segregating the sensitive fields from the non sensitive fields and making sure that the sensitive fields are better protected and they can be accessed in a different manner. So, for example, let's talk about this uh, scenario. This is the original data that gets that got sent to ADS. So we have, this is all my data that can go inside ADS. ADS Archon identifies sensitive data from non-sensitive data through AI, and it can move this sensitive data into a data bunker and regular data into the archive repository. Now you can see that whenever we'll try to access this data, we will not be accessing it directly. There's no way to access the data directly from the bunker. It has to go through Archon Data Store through a bunker API. And the bunker API is also regulated in terms of authorization. And the data that will be stored inside Archon Data Store will be tokenized and encrypted using so based on what sort of data there is, there are about 7 to 8 tokenization mechanisms that we use to tokenize and keep that data. And whenever there is a request to Argon Data Store to access sensitive data, it goes through a bunker API. There is another level of authorization that is checked, and if the user is authorized to access it, it is the pseudonymized entity that we have inside the data bunker that that is converted back to plain data, send it via the bunker API and shown to the user. So you can see at any point the sensitive data cannot be directly accessed by the user at all because there is transparent data encryption applied on database level on top of the data bunker also. So we cannot really do anything with all that encrypted information. It has to come, the lookup, data lookup has to happen from the ADS interface, and the bunker API is going to extract that information and give it to us. So just like that, we have we focus big time on governance and discovery. So you can see that we have a centralized compliance and governance framework inside ADS for HR and payroll data. All of these add-ons are unlocked when it comes to accessibility of data. What data should be shown? We are talking about archive data here still. So, which parts of the data must be shown to which category and groups of the user? There's role-based access control that will be monitoring the attributes that have to be shown to the user. There's masking and encryption that can be done on top of that data and can be regulated between which data has to be shown to which group of users. There's data lifecycle management that we have covered, where we go through a defensible disposition of data when we really talk about expiring the data. So we'll cover this in more detail. Archon Data Store has a unified storage which can bring together all your structured, unstructured, and semi-structured data at one place. Be able to identify relationships between that data and present that data um, in a unified manner. Then about the metadata, we have proprietary metadata formats for each industries, which make sure that the data is very well classified and discovered to take further actions on it. Then we have democratization where multiple users can come together and work based on their roles. We have encryption, masking, quality checks, and data bunker, which will just make sure that the entire compliance, protection, and security bits come together and make ADS a very compliant repository for any governance use cases. I'd like to pause here in case there are any questions.
Soumya, there is a question in the chat.
Okay.
Uh,
Mm.
they have asked you to elaborate on AI-driven compliance and about data bunker and archive repository. There are two different questions here.
Okay.
So,
Oh, that's great. I think I might be having about AI-driven compliance. All right. So, question just in time. Um, Now, when we started doing archival, and we started so early on when storage was very expensive, it was difficult to manage that much storage, and that's why we started thinking about archival. Now, considering that storage has started getting cheaper compared to the previous times, it has become a little tricky to really archive data because people find it unnecessary to really archive data when they can just throw it in an S3 bucket and not care about it. But what really why they really cannot afford to do that is because of compliance and governance that has to be monitored on top of that data, stewardship that can get lost if you just throw the data into an S3 bucket, for which we talk about governance, we talk about compliance. And here, when we are talking about archival, because archival has grown from its initial concept, now when we want to move data into an archive, we also want analytics to happen on top of it. We also want that particular data lake slash archive solution to give out analytical results so that we do not have to keep another copy of of that data to do analytics at a different location, because that's unnecessary, right? It should all We want all of that coming together, and that's what we have achieved here with AI based governance. So we can see here that for compliance specifically, I mentioned that we have a data bunker, we have classification and entity resolution, which helps us identify that what really is my data type like in the source, and it will be able to identify all the sensitive data from non-sensitive data. We'll be able to tag entities and groups so that we can identify that this is all my master versus this is all my non-master versus this is my useful versus non-useful, old versus new kind of categorization. And same we can do with the data classification, identifying domains of data, identifying that this is actually, let's say in a healthcare system, this is actually my patient data, this is actually my doctor's data, this is my care data, allergy data, etc. So all of that can be identified by AI on top when we really move into the archival process. Then talking about storage and management for AI-based governance, right? We have when we are doing when we say that we have all sorts of data formats accepted for the archive, we are talking about real time ingestion optimization, we are talking about live archival where data should automatically be identified as eligible to archive and be moved. And when we do something like that, we have to have different ingestion optimizations for different storage formats. For example, for blobs, we will have to use different ingestion optimizations, whereas for videos, for transcriptions, for all these different data types, we will have uh, particular curated methods that we have to make sure we employ so that the data doesn't start getting bloated in the archive and it becomes another problem to deal with. That is also something that we use AI for. Then, when we are doing content based archival, there is data scraping and summarization, which takes a big step in this process, because we are talking about metadata management and metadata building. And this metadata that gets built, it comes from scraping data, for especially for unstructured data. It comes from scraping that data, identifying context on top of data, and there are so many other things that come based on the type of data there is. If it is an audio call, there can be sentiment analysis, there can be summarization. If there is a video, there can be again transcription and identification of individual objects, so object resolution inside the video. All of that is captured as part of the metadata using AI, and we can then be it can then be used inside our archive repository to search. For example, if we are just searching for, let's say, lion, and there could be a word lion written inside a data record inside a table. There could be a lion coming inside a video, and there could be lion being spoken in audio. If we archive all of that, those sorts of data using Archon data store into the target, because it can support and flourish in all different data formats. If we search for the word lion, you will see that there's a video which shows a lion in it. There is an audio where we spoke about a lion, and there will be a table where we had a mention of lion and things like that. So that's where entity resolution and summarization, they all work together to make our metadata even more strong. Then we have load configuration to make sure that our storage steering and the incoming source data is orchestrated well and it's stored into the archive repository. Then, talking more about governance, we have quality checks in place in the when we work on ingestion. So inside Archon data store, since we are talking about live archival, where we make sure that data is qualified and moved to the archive from production system proactively, instead of really waiting for that data to become really old, become historic, become a problem, and then move it. We try to do it in a proactive manner. So during that, we have to make sure that there are privacy and security checks, there are quality checks that are put in place based on the type of data that is coming in from the source. That's also where metadata works as a gatekeeper. The metadata that has been identified, curated, augmented for those particular data fields works as a gatekeeper to make sure that no other data really is allowed access inside the system which doesn't fulfill the metadata criteria. Also, because a very important property that an archive has to hold is immutability. You cannot just delete data after like that. You cannot just go and update data, because that's the entire credibility that the system holds. That once the data has been moved from source to target, it is untampered, it is immutable, you cannot make a single edit. Yes, based on the life cycle, the data will get purged out, but there is not a single thing we can do in order to update data. So that is also something that gets handled via AI to make sure that the quality is kept in check. Because if it is not handled in the incoming path, then it cannot be changed in the at a later point. So yeah, that was my answer for your question. I hope I answered your question. All right. So there's just one other thing I thought I'll cover. So when it comes to HR and payroll data, when it comes to HR and payroll data, we have multiple reports that we have created. So you can see that these are all the reports in payroll archival that we have worked on while working on Arcon. So we have seen about some 13 to 14 clients who have come up to us only for payroll archival. And this is kind of the standard reports required in payroll archival, and they can be built out using the Archon data stores um, reporting dashboard. And some of these reports are also available out of the box, and they can be created right away from uh, from automated workflows. And some of these, they are all very very customizable, and they can eventually they just give you a place to start envisioning all that you moved from the source, and to see how what is the impact that you have really got. So yeah, that is another thing that helps when you are doing archival, because you don't really want to do all the reporting and all the screen creation again on the target side. Whatever was available in the source, you can just leverage that, and make sure that all the popular and all the most important statistics that you want are available as is once you move into the archive system. Okay, I'd like to open the floor for questions a little bit, and then I can talk a little about who we are as a company, and more.
Sure, Soumya. There are a couple of questions in the chat. Can I read them out to you so you can just go one by one?
Yes, please.
So, the first question was on AI driven compliance. I think we have addressed that. And the second one was about a little bit of elaboration on data bunker and archive repository.
Sure. Okay. Um, so data bunker, as I spoke about, we have to have a differentiated air gapped storage, just to make sure that we can protect our data in a different in a segregated storage, to make sure that there can be physical air gap or a logical air gap that you can create. And if we want to really talk about moving to the cloud, for example, so I was talking about that example I didn't complete. So if we are talking about moving to the cloud and they want to make sure that their sensitive data stays on prem, and their non-sensitive data, regular data, can just keep scaling and keep moving to higher platforms, to make sure that the analytics gets better, and it gets exposed to better insights, for better insights. So what we can do in such a case is we can make sure that our sensitive data stays on prem as per the regulation for that particular territory, for that particular data. And we can take all our non-sensitive regular data on cloud, and make sure that we have modernized ourselves while still being compliant. So this is one of the most common use cases we have seen for data bunker, which has helped organizations to be able to scale up, to be able to modernize while making sure that they stay compliant.
Okay, makes sense. And the next question we have here is, can you share a success story where your team implemented a long-term HR and payroll data archiving solution, and what key factors contributed to its success?
Of course. So this is about the South America insurance company, which had payroll data, and they were trying to move from a very legacy software to a new one. They were spending about 1.5 million on that software. For it was out of support, and there were a lot of issues there. When we were able to migrate all of that. So when we were able to migrate all their legacy data into the archive, the total cost of ownership reduced by 70%, and they were only paying 250K after for their legacy data at least. So that particular application, so we made sure that the new application that they migrated to, the more modernized one, we had connectors to that application, and all the production data and all the live data that was coming into that application, there were pipelines set up to automatically archive the data that crosses a certain threshold. And it was a very sustainable system that was developed to make sure all my historical data is first made compliant and kept in a unified storage. And also my new system, which contains all the data, basically all the production data, all the current employees data, can also be moved based on particular criteria, based on date of leaving, date of termination, etc. And it was made sure that the all the software like Arcon Data Store and their new HR payroll software together considered also reduce the total cost of ownership by that much. So that was a very good win. The HR retrieval timelines for payroll information reduced from about 40 hours to less than 2 minutes. And because that is all actually because legacy systems are not built in that way to be able to work with that much historical data. So you can archive data within that system, and that's what they did. The source system, the legacy source system, did have a archival inbuilt capability, but then retrieving data from there is impossible, and then there's a vendor lock-in because of which they can't really ever move out of that application. That's what we facilitated, and that's where the TCO came down.
Fantastic. So, another question I think is going to be an extension of the previous one, where there is a specific question on the support system that ADS can provide. Are there two different storages that it can handle? One storage with the fully indexed data, and the other one with metadata indexed data, which is otherwise known as cold storage.
Oh, beautiful. So, all of that, it's a very technical question. So, all of that is handled with the metadata that we are talking about. So, there's already storage tiering that happens on AWS and on Azure. And let's say if you are doing your archival on top of these platforms, on top of these clouds, then we will be so there's already storage tiering going on based on usage patterns, and based on the metadata and the context that we understand about that data, we tier on top of that optimization and make sure that the storage is really optimized. And because we know what the usage patterns are like, the retrievability, the data retrievability still remains to within a minute's response, even if we are taking it from cold storage. So it's just about how we manage the metadata and seamlessly integrate it with the patterns using AI. Sunduja, I think
Okay.
we are at the top of the hour.
This is one more question. I think someone wants to see a demo of the system. Is this being covered in this session, or something exclusive needs to happen on top of this?
Oh, no, it's not covered. We're already at the top of the hour. But I'd be happy to walk you through a demo. We have a customized demo for payroll archival specifically, where we can show you all of that we have talked about here. So you can drop in a request. Sindhuja, can you reach out to them and see if they can drop in a request?
Sure, we'll do that.
Yeah. Anything else?
There's just one last question, if you can take a couple of minutes. What do you think about the on-demand indexing solution for archive and case management? Does ADS have this feature?
On-demand indexing solution for archival.
Yes.
Okay. So, so ADS right now can make sure. So when I talked about identifying from analyzer, identifying the fields that are more critical versus less critical, all of those fields are identified within Archon, and we will be able to predict from there and recommend from there. There's a recommender system that works in the background that recommends that, okay, these are few fields that you should be indexing. There is partitioning, bucketing, all of those. All of those optimization techniques available within the application. And when you talk about on demand indexing, yes, it can be done on demand also, but the system also recommends a lot of times that these should be the indexes. And 6 out of 10 times the recommendations are correct on what should be indexed and how they should be going forward with it. And so there is another thing that we capture, which is called operational metadata. The operational metadata handles the on-demand indexing part that you talked about, that based on how the usage patterns currently are, the metadata keeps getting augmented, and it identifies on what exactly should be a change that I can make to the system to make sure that the system is more responsive. For example, let's say if there is some search that is taking forever, it is identified from the operational metadata that, okay, this search is, there could be something wrong with that search. So automatically there is a troubleshooting mechanism and a housekeeping mechanism that happens within the tool that can make sure that the the particular glitch that we have, there could be a column that would be, not partitioned, it would be growing very huge. So those are recommendation systems that are issued from there based on the housekeeping that we do. And from there we can partition, from there we can index and optimize it furthermore. Does that answer?
Pretty much, I guess. Thank you so much.
Okay, so I'll just close now. So I come from Platform 3 Solutions. We are about a decade old, and we have extensive experience in enterprise data archival. We have our offices across the landscape, and we are headquartered in the US. We have offices in India, Australia, Singapore, Canada, and California. And these are few of our clients. We have a lot of Fortune 500 clients, and a lot of them have come to us for payroll archival specifically. At least 5 of them that I can see over here specifically came for payroll archival. And we have a team of experts in-house that can understand finance data as well as compliance laws together. And we will be able to so the way that we take this, somebody asked about a demo, the way that we take this is we go into an assessment, we do a risk profile analysis on how your enterprise data is currently structured and how it should be going forward, and based on that we just take it ahead. So these are our credentials. These are our partners, our technical partners and our SI partners that we work with. And that's it. I think that's a wrap.